Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, first, good evening. Welcome to Update here on Manx Radio FM. It's your half-hour roundup of news on and from the Isle of Man over the past 24 hours or so. Coming up before 5:30, we're going to take a look actually at what's happening in the House of Keys tomorrow. As we know, it's been a fairly turbulent few days for health services and talk of finances. We know there are going to be more questions. We'll take a look at those. Also tonight, though, some good news concerning some of the services Manx Care provides for families and those hoping to become parents. And later, what's happening with the organisation of the Southern 100 this year. All that, we'll keep an eye on the traffic and travel as well. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can text the studio. It's 166 177. We'll start with a roundup of the news headlines with Christian Fastamai.
Politicians have been left in the dark by a government which has misled the public, according to the MHK, who leaked information about health cuts. Laurie Hooper says he can't believe a word that's said after the U-turn over chopping non-elective care.
We know that what they're telling us is not the whole story. They are running scared, and instead of standing up and accepting responsibility, they're trying to cast the blame on other people.
Meanwhile, senior bosses from Manx Care, the Health Minister and the Chief Officer of the Department of Health and Social Care have been summoned to appear before a Tynwald Scrutiny Committee in connection with the cuts. 150 students at Isle of Man secondary schools and UCM are taking part in an accredited mental health awareness course.
This course is not about sitting and talking about your feelings and what's going on in your life and analysing yourself. It is about being aware of your own mental health and the mental health of those around you.
The initiative comes amid growing concerns with the island's suicide rate 44% higher than the UK's. And TT legend Guy Martin says he'd love to be a warden on the Calf of Man. The former motorcycle racer spent a week on the island as part of his new TV show Proper Jobs. In the latest international news now, and a 15-year-old boy who was injured in a school stabbing has died. He was attacked at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield. Another teenager has been arrested. President Trump has accused Canada of being uncooperative days after imposing a 25% trade tariff on his neighbour. Stocks in the US are starting to fall, as they have done in Asia and Europe. And Beyoncé has finally won Album of the Year at last night's Grammys. She'd previously missed out on the prize 4 times, something she referred to in her acceptance speech.
I'd like to thank and acknowledge and praise all of the firefighters for keeping us safe. I just feel very full and very honoured. It's been many, many years.
Those are the Update News headlines. I'll be back with the latest from 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Christian. Well, the weather forecast now brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. First of all, we've got that yellow weather warning in place at the moment for coastal overtopping. That came into force at 1 p.m. this afternoon. It's in place until 5 a.m. tomorrow. That's because of the strong south-southwest winds, which will bring waves and debris onto exposed roads and promenades. That's around the times of high tide. The amount of water and debris is likely to be greater overnight into tomorrow. That is at 3:15 a.m. So it'll be the usual areas: Shore Road in Russian, Carstown Promenade and Northern Douglas Promenade. The rest of the forecast, we also know incidentally the steam packet has cancelled this evening's sailings because of the weather. So it's going to be dry, breezy. That rain will arrive tonight. It will be heavy at times. A south or southwest wind will become strong to gale force. Temperatures around 9 Celsius. Tomorrow is going to start wet and windy, but the rain will clear around lunchtime. Some sunny intervals then developing later in the afternoon with maximum temperatures of around 10. Strong wind, though, that will veer more westerly later in the day, and then the sunset will be at 3 minutes past 5. Sunrise tomorrow morning just after 8.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode Estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
SMS Trading. New and second-hand furniture from flat pack to fully built. See our range at 3 St Paul Square, Ramsey. All-island delivery and man-in-a-van service available. Call SMS Trading on 315151 or find SMS Trading on Facebook.
The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio. It's just gone 5:05. Well, it's been several days now since we heard about the cuts being made to health service, but still it's dominating conversations, with the health minister saying people have to be realistic about what services Manx Care can provide within the budget allocated. Claire Christian has also apologised for the miscommunication surrounding disruption to some patients' elective care. Ms Christian has told us she stepped in to alter the changes Manx Care was planning to make, despite the health body supposedly being arm's length to government. She says she had to intervene because operational decisions would have had huge political and public impact. Well, following an £800,000 cash injection from Treasury, planned procedures and appointments on Ireland, which had been or were at risk of being cancelled, are being reinstated, we're told. But UK hospitals have still been asked to stop off-island procedures and appointments which are considered non-urgent. And as we know, someone who brought those issues into the light last week was the Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper. We should remember he was the former Health and Social Care Minister. He leaked details of what had originally been proposed. You can listen to interviews with Claire Christian and Laurie Hooper on the latest edition of Perspective with Phil Gorn. You can find that at manxradio.com. John Moss is with me now. John, you're going to be in the House of Keys sitting tomorrow. We know questions are going to be asked.
Yeah, it's going to come up to the fore again, it's likely. Tomorrow's Key session scheduled to have 23 questions, including 5 starred questions. That's one per MHK given priority. With the agenda was to be rounded off by a piece of clauses work for the lengthy statute rule revision amendment bill, but I understand now that the bill is being pushed back a week. It means that questions will have a straight run through. On previous occasions, members have voted after the initial hour to place the remaining questions at the end of the agenda. Last week, for instance, questions were eventually finished well into the afternoon. Well, last week, Mr Hooper got into a spot of bother with Mr Speaker over his use of what was deemed unparliamentary language. I can say it because it's outside Parliament. It was double speak. This week, Mr Speaker will have a question addressed to him, which is unusual, over how he judged urgent or special reason questions at last week's sitting, how each request was justified, and how Mr Speaker chooses the questions to allow. It doesn't take a mental giant to work out that Mr Thomas may not be best pleased with questions that were allowed or disallowed last week. It'll be interesting to see how robustly he puts out unhappiness and how robustly Mr Speaker responds. Well, of questions themselves, Mr Morehouse leads the field with 7, but one of Joni Farragher's 2 questions is likely to get the members most on their feet. It asks whether any reductions to elective surgeries or other services are being proposed or planned, and will the Health Minister make a statement. This story has moved on quite a way, of course, here on Manx Radio. Other starred questions touch on how a state pension or benefit will be paid if a new application is approved, and BACS transfer is not possible, the part paid by the Treasury Minister in the doctor's pay negotiations, use of the fibre optic cable running under the water a bit to our right, just down here in Port Skillen, it starts, and my card usage. Questions then move on from one Mr Thomas to the Speaker I mentioned, assessments of fly tipping, artificial intelligence, mobile phones in schools, an update on the old police station in Castletown. A firm called Marlin Spike Properties, incidentally, have a tenancy on that building and have been beavering away there for some time. Plans include a hotel. Other questions, person-parent craft courses, if and when driving licence will be available in the form of a smartphone app, air source heat pumps, the top floor of the Summerhill View, that's the development just down from Governor's Bridge, and the patient transfer policy and contract. But it is likely that Joni Farragher's question will it could attract an hour's debate. These are questions and answers, but they do go on. Generally, in the last few weeks or few months, we've been averaging about 5 questions in the first hour, and then sometimes they move on and move that away. It is likely to go on for a long time tomorrow, for this is a very contentious issue.
It certainly is, and we will be covering that in detail. As I say, John will be there, so do stay tuned to Manx Radio AM if you want to hear it live, or just check out our socials and website. Well, senior figures from Manx Care, the Health Minister and Chief Officer of the Department of Health and Social Care, are going to face questions from a Tynwald Scrutiny Committee later this week. Chair of that Public Accounts Committee is the Speaker, as we've been hearing about, June Watterson, who says it's important to understand how Manx Care made the decision to cut surgeries.
It's been a matter of significant public concern, and the Public Accounts Committee wanted to get under the skin of it and hear from those responsible. We want to know what's happening, we want to know why it's happening, we want to know who it's affecting, how it's been decided, how it's been communicated, and that's something that the public will be able to listen in or watch. Members of the public can come in and can watch the proceedings in the Legislative Council chamber, or they can go onto the Tynwald website and there will be a live streaming service, not just for audio, but with cameras as well. So that's something that people will be able to watch and listen from at home if they wish to do so.
Was this something that was pre-scheduled, or was this something that the Public Accounts Committee recently contacted Manx Care about after last week? No,
this is something that wasn't scheduled. Manx Care and the relationship between the Department of Health and Social Care and provision of healthcare on the Isle of Man is something that's been on Public Accounts Committee's radar since 2017, and some of the things that are going on now were recommended in some of those early reports. But this is very much a reaction to the public concern and about the feeling that there may not have been adequate public information about what's going on, and so to really drill down into that in a way that isn't really possible to do in a normal Tynwald motion or at a question time, but to drill down into these issues with the people who are making them. That's the purpose of the session on Wednesday morning.
You know, we can't really preempt something that's going to happen, but is there anything that you'd be interested to find to look into a bit more?
There'll be focus around the decision-making process, around the financial status of Manx Care. There's been an awful lot of talk about how much they're going to overspend this year and what difference these measures will make and how they've balanced up the needs of healthcare and finance. So I would expect that that's what people would be expecting us to ask.
Mr. Hooper is on the PAC. Mm-hmm. Does this kind of, I know being the former health minister, is this kind of...
Miss August Phillips has recused herself from the inquiry. She's currently a member of the Department of Health. Mr. Hooper, of course, was minister until late last year, but these decisions have been made after his time in the Department of Health and Social Care. So it's expected that he won't have to recuse himself. There isn't going to be a conflict of interest because the decisions were made after he left.
That is the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, June Watterson, about that Tynwald Scrutiny Committee happening on Wednesday. Again, we'll be bringing you more details on that. 12 and a half minutes past 5. We're going to stay with the theme of health, because if you're one of those people who does have to travel to the UK for hospital treatment, would you be prepared to pay towards your travel costs? Well, it's an idea that one Man in Line caller suggested today in a solution to save Manx Care some money. Joe was talking to Andy Wint.
I just wondered, the people that are going across each week for treatment at Liverpool and elsewhere, do they contribute anything to the transport costs?
Oh, I think sometimes if the people go with them, they have to pay part cost, but no, obviously the patients don't pay anything because it's patient transfer.
Yes, it's just that it's a big expense, I would think. I would have thought in this day and age they could have contributed something themselves.
Well, we've always paid it in the past, and this is the whole thing, is that there will be some people who could pay it no problem, but a lot of people can't, and particularly if you're taking children across and people have to take time off work and what have you, then it's been one of those things that the public purse is always taken care of, and it's reassuring for the people. The last thing you want to worry about if you're going for perhaps urgent treatment is money, Joe, surely.
Yes, I could understand it for people, working class people that are working, but there must be people who are retired that are with means I'm sure they could have a means test, and anybody that could afford to pay, not all of it, just a contribution. It's a big expense.
How do you think that would go down politically, though, Joe? I mean, can you imagine a politician who stood on that at the election and said, we're going to means test patient transfer?
Well, it's one of those things, I'm just putting it my way forward. If I was to go across, I wouldn't mind contributing a little bit towards the fare.
Right.
It would save the National Health a lot of money per year.
So that was one of the callers to Man in Line today, suggesting that perhaps people travelling over to the UK for treatment should pay their own travel costs. As always, we welcome your thoughts on such matters. 682-631, incidentally, is the number if you'd like to call Man in Line out of hours. We have got some positive news from Manx Care today. We do want to share that with you as well. They are reassuring people on the Isle of Man that there are no changes to 2 areas of care affecting families. Now, this follows some recent social media speculation. Tessa Hawley has the details.
Last month, an anonymous poster used the Families of Man group on Facebook to share their concerns about the infant feeding team being discontinued. They claimed they'd overheard a conversation and encouraged others in the group to share their experiences of the team so that they could be used as a source of support to keep the service going. People were asked to leave comments which were designed to be sent to the health body, with numerous individuals doing so. Manx Radio contacted Manx Care for clarity over the situation, and in response, the health body has now confirmed that there is no change to the support being provided by the infant feeding team. The health body says the only difference is that the location of the team has been changed and it's now based within the health visiting team. However, Manx Care says this will not impact the delivery of support to families. In addition, after the suspension of non-urgent off-island treatment was confirmed, whilst the health body struggles to balance its books, there was also concerns raised that this may affect IVF. However, Manx Care has told Manx Radio there will be no changes implemented around IVF referrals and or treatment associated with the off-island treatment reductions in this financial year.
Tessa Hawley reporting. 16.5
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
So the main thing is, as we mentioned earlier, the steam packet sailing this evening and the overnight return has been cancelled. That's because of the weather. On the roads, the main thing to look out for, there are temporary traffic lights on Whitebridge Hill, 24 hours a day. That's in Onken. That's for water main work. I think that's just until Friday. The Mountain Road is open again. It was closed earlier because of an RTC. And just checking down at the airport, we know there were issues because of a tug that's owned by Menzies last night, had a flat tyre. Everything's been okay, though, down at the airport today, and everything looking pretty good on the arrivals and departures board for the rest of the evening.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside.
OK, so we know that there was quite a lot of weather over the past month, but despite Storm Iowyn bringing violent storm force 11 winds, wind speeds overall were actually, can you believe it, lower than average. The Rossway Met Office has issued its weather summary for January, and Lewis Foster takes a look at it.
Particularly of note is the rare red weather warning issued on the 23rd of January ahead of Storm Iowyn's arrival. On Friday the 24th, gusts of up to 81 miles per hour, that's 70 knots, were recorded at the airport, the highest in 20 years, with 94 miles per hour recorded at Castletown Breakwater and 107 miles per hour recorded on Snae Fell. Overall, wind speeds on the whole were a couple of knots lower than average, with a mean speed across the month of 13 knots. Meanwhile, the mean temperature was 6 degrees, which is 0.4 degrees below the 30-year average. Following the mild Christmas period, a polar air mass brought particularly cold conditions. At the lowest point, temperatures dropped to minus 2.1 degrees Celsius on the morning of the 10th of January. 4 days later, however, saw the highest temperature of the month, recorded at 11.7 degrees. There was 67.3 hours of sunshine overall, which, believe it or not, is about 10 hours above average. The best day was the 29th of January, during which we saw 7.6 hours of sunshine. Rainfall, meanwhile, was up about 25% on the 30-year average, with a total of 103.11 millimetres of rain falling across the month. The wettest day was the 5th of January with 27.4 millimetres in the gauge at Ronaldsway. That precipitation falling as snow above a few hundred feet, with a good covering on higher ground, with drifting and blizzard conditions.
Lewis Foster reporting there. You can find that full report on the Manx Radio website. Honestly, we just feel like we're in need of some more sunshine. It's been so lovely having a few brighter days over the past week or so. 7.6 hours on one day sounds almost idyllic, doesn't it? Coming up to 5:20. Now, responsibility for organising and staging all road racing on the Ballown circuit is going to return to the Southern 100 Racing Club from this year. This follows discussions between the club, government departments and ACU Events, which has been responsible for racing in the south post-COVID. Well, Simon Richardson has been talking to the Southern 100's press and media liaison officer Phil Edge and asked, is this the right move for racing in the south of the island?
Honestly, yes. The present club have been running it since 1981 and it built it up to the status it is now. And this was just put on us 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, to alleviate some of the problems that were between the government and the ACU at the time. So they thought it was a good idea and we went along with it, and we subsequently have reverting back now to the status quo, and which is a benefit for everybody, I think.
Now, post-COVID, the ACU's been overseeing the racing at Ballown. Why do you think now is the right time for the change?
I think just general circumstances, the way the races are going, and we're still doing a lot of the work for them. Some of the work have been taken off us and contracted out to various companies over here, which we're happy with and continuing with them. So there's no loss of earnings by those companies. So that's one thing to alleviate out of it. But we were one big happy family, and we've been treated as that. And 3 people that were brought in by the ACU, the clerk of the course, after Peter Oates retired, clerk of the course Giles Ollie, and his deputy Andy Brown, and event safety officer Tony McBride, they are happy and they are joining us and becoming part of the family now, which they're happy to do, and they say they're proud to be part of our organisation.
In terms of impact, will there be any change in both sort of funding for the racing at Ballown and also staffing, the likes of marshals, medical cover?
No changes there at all. It was business as usual, as I would say. We're complying with all the new regulations that come out and what we have to do, and everything's in place and being put in place for the racing this year. So
That is Phil Edge, who's the Press and Media Liaison Officer for the Southern 100 Racing, speaking to Simon Richardson there about taking race organisation back in-house. So now the Southern 100 Racing will be race organisers and promoters for all events on the Ballown course. The current clerk, as Phil said, Giles Ollie, and Deputy Clerk of the course, Andy Brown, they're joining the Southern 100 family, continuing in their positions along with the Event Safety Officer, Tony McBride. It really is known as the Friendly Racers for a reason down there. They are a wonderful team. Also got Trish and her team who do a lot of the fundraising as well. So looking forward to hearing much more about what's going to be happening there in the coming months. It's 22 minutes past 5. Let's join Darren now for some sports news.
Good evening. Starting with FC Isle of Man. Manager Paul Jones has said his side has suffered another injury after their 1-1 draw with Earlham on Saturday. The Ravens had to come from behind through Tom Creer to take a point from the North West Counties Football League game. Jones was reluctant to use his subs in the match to save players for Bury on Tuesday night. However, he will now be missing a key starter for their fixture tomorrow.
Booby's come off tonight, so we'll have to have a little look at how his hamstring is. We know we're a bit short on Tuesday night as well, just around availability. So yeah, we were kind of had a little bit of one eye on the game Tuesday night. No matter who we were playing, we needed to consider that with how we used the players, and I thought we kind of got away with it. Got that right tonight, and conditions weren't really conducive to how we played last week. Earlham have come and pressed us high and really in our faces and made it a bit of a battle, and I thought we stood up to that really well in large part. I think we've scored 2 goals in the first half that, I'm disappointed that they've not been given. I don't see there's an awful lot wrong with either of those goals. I think there's a penalty decision in the second half that on another day goes for us. We've rode our luck a couple of times. They've hit the bar as well, and it's one of those games that I think probably a draw is a fair result on the balance of play. And we don't get enough draws in this league. We lose too many games and don't get the point when when we're maybe not quite at it, or like we were tonight, not quite clicking in attacking areas, or the conditions aren't conducive to playing good football. So I'm happy that we've got a point, and happy with a lot of things that I saw there, and just a little bit more quality in the final third, and maybe a different day with a different referee. We get a couple, the goals stand, and it's a different feeling. But the crowds really help us to dig in and get through. And as I said last week, they'll be really important for the rest of the season. We've got a couple of away games now, and then we're pretty much at home, bar one game, all the way through to the end of the season.
FC Isle of Man boss Paul Jones. Staying with football, PL have extended their lead at the top of the Canada Life Premier League after their win on Saturday. The Westerners played their match in hand on Corinthians against Union Mills and won 6-2 to claim a 3-point lead at the top of the table. Ayr, meanwhile, are losing ground on the title race as they lost 3-1 to Russian at home, and the champions are now 9 points behind Peel with a game in hand. On to hockey, and there's an early contender for the title in the Men's Premier League. Backers A beat second place Vikings A on Saturday to continue their strong start, as they have scored 20 goals and only conceded once in 3 games. Cartertown Ladies A are also putting an early marker down in the Ladies Premier League after they beat Valkyrs A 3-0 to continue their run of 3 clean sheets in a row. And it's tight in the Men's Division 1 table. Backers, Vikings, Cartertown and Ramsey are separated by only a point so far, with Backers ahead on goal difference. In rugby, Douglas and Vagabonds were unable to build on their victories last weekend as they both lost at home on Saturday. In the Regional 2 Northwest, Douglas led at the break, but a second-half fight back from Burnage saw the visitors take a 25-17 win at Portachi. Meanwhile, Vaggers were unlucky to lose by 2 points to Clitheroe in the counties 3, ADM, Lancashire and Cheshire. The Manx side lost by over 70 points in the reverse fixture early in the season. And in the TT, the Roadhouse Macau race team have announced their lineup for the 2025 event. Team owner and regular rider Brian McCormack will be joined by the 2024 International Road Racing Champion Superbike winner David Datzer. The German will be looking to have a better TT this time around after crashing at the 11th milestone in the first Super Twin race last year, which had affected his campaign.
Thank you very much indeed, Darren. I think somebody said to me it was about 121 days or so until the first practice for TT. It seems unbelievable at the moment, doesn't it? Coming up on Breakfast tomorrow morning with Ben from 6, we're going to be talking about the lambing season and the dog attacks on livestock, and the police talking about just how important it is for people to keep their pets under control. We know last year there were some awful incidences. It's talking more about that. It's also currently Tinnitus Awareness Week, so we're going to be hearing about that condition and also finding out about some of the support that's available here on the island. We'll be hearing from a campaigner hoping to be a candidate for the upcoming Legislative Council election, and a group of local school children tell us why they're raising money for a charity in Tanzania. There's so much that happens in the island schools with regards to making them aware of issues further afield. Christy had some guests from Ballacameen High School talking about the One World Challenge on her programme today. You can watch a video of them on the Manx Radio website. But that is all from Update this evening. Coming up next, it's Agenda with Phil Gaughan. Chris Kinney will be here live from 6 with Greatest Hits. Then Ian Cottier has Time for Brass for you from 9. And Dave Moore will take you into the small hours with After Hours from 10. Whatever you're doing, have a lovely evening, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.